Alright, this is an unboxing and review of the new Cutech 10-inch bench top joiner. I just got it last night, haven't had time to open it yet. There were a few tools right on top, things that you'd use for assembly, and a couple of stickers, and I'm going to set those to the side and continue opening this thing. This was really well packaged. They did not go cheap on the packaging. It is protected and everything came in its place. They've made a longer fence on a couple of their new jointers here, and on this 10-inch in particular. And I'll go through it later, but there are also some brackets that are included that help secure the fence so that you don't get as much wobble, which is something I definitely appreciate in one of these jointers. I did end up cutting the box away rather than lifting this thing out. It seemed to be the better choice, and I didn't want to break anything or bend anything or get anything out of place. Here I'm taking out the dust extraction adapter and some of the tools I'm going to end up needing. I set those aside as I finish taking this out of the styrofoam and other packaging. My initial reaction, and just looking at this right away, is it looks like it's good quality. It looks solid. It feels solid. There's nothing on this that would make me think it is a low quality product. It looks very nice. I'm going to peel away this plastic. And I'm going to have to wipe this down. Again, this looks like a quality product, especially for a bench top jointer. Here you can see all the various parts that come in the box. There's the fence brackets. Next to them are some stabilizers for the fence, and then different bolts and other pieces that you end up using to assemble the fence or other parts of the jointer. So it's all pretty simple and laid out in the instructions. Also included are some push blocks. I'll test these out. I don't necessarily need those because I have my own push blocks. And then of course the attachment for dust collection. Here's me looking like an idiot for a while because I filmed myself messing around instead of assembling the fence bracket. So I don't have film of me assembling that, but it's really easy, so just follow the directions and you can figure it out. It's not too hard. After you assemble the fence bracket, then you're going to slide some square nuts into the fence itself, and that's what you use to attach to the fence bracket. It's really easy. Again, the directions are straightforward, not too hard to figure out. This is just me attaching the fence to the fence bracket. It was pretty easy to do. I probably didn't need directions for all of this, but I didn't want to reinforce any stereotypes about men not following directions and look like a complete fool on video. The next step is, again, fairly simple and straightforward. I'm just going to be attaching the fence to this bracket that is connected to the jointer itself. All you had to do to attach the fence to the jointer was just take the lever that's provided, and there's a square nut that goes with it, and you just screw that in and it attaches really nicely and everything is in its place. Here I'm attaching the fence stabilizers. These were really kind of interesting. Once they're assembled and you get everything in place, they hold the fence in a very stable and firm position, so I like those quite a bit. I removed the cutter head guard to take a look at the cutter head itself, and as you can see, it has a spiral version cutter head with two-sided inserts. I do wish that it had 4-sided inserts. That would be kind of a nice feature to have, but 2-sided is still a pretty decent feature, and I can't complain about it. You can see some of the other features on this jointer. There's the safety key, which is appreciated because I do have young children at home and I'd like to keep them safe. And the adjustment knob is on the side there. You can also see this depth gauge, which is adjustable, and it works pretty well as far as I can tell after using this a few times. You can also find the dust port on the side, which does have an adapter. One of the first things you have to do to a benchtop jointer is adjust the tables and make sure everything is square to the cutter head, so you get a nice even cut. There are a lot of videos out there about how to do that. I'll let you go and find those rather than going through a detailed process. Now, I don't know if this is the case with all Cutech tools, but I was able to align the infeed and outfeed table in very little time because they were almost completely aligned straight out of the box. I didn't have much problem with that. I expected to be spending hours and hours trying to align these tables, and I really only spent about maybe 15 or 20 minutes, so it wasn't a bad process. The next step in the process is aligning the table extensions, which involves pulling them out, tightening some nuts underneath on the table, and then using a level you make adjustments to the extensions until they align with each infeed or outfeed table so that you get a nice straight cut using the extensions. It is a little bit of a time-consuming process, but again, one thing I noticed with these is Cutech ended up having these almost completely aligned straight out of the box, so I didn't have too many problems with it. Again, I can't promise this would be the case for everybody, but so far everything that I did with this jointer was far easier than I expected. There are a couple of different ways to check to see if your infeed and outfeed tables are square to the fence. And I thought I'd take my angle gauge and just check how close I was, and you'll see that I was right on. I was really lucky apparently, or Cutech is amazingly good, I don't know. But I was at 90 degrees on both the infeed and outfeed table when I checked it, so I didn't have to make any adjustments. I also checked with my double square to see if the fence was 90 degrees to the table, and that worked out just the same as the electronic gauge. So this was 90 degrees. You can make adjustments on the back. The fence is easy to adjust, but yeah, for me it was 90 degrees right away. No problems, no adjustments necessary. Okay, now that I have everything squared as far as I can tell, I have my guard back on, everything's set up. I want to test this jointer out with a couple of different pieces of wood I have. I'm currently working on a project with maple, and I have another project I'm going to be working on very soon where I'm going to be using walnut. I've got my ear protection, got my push blocks, everything's set up. I'm going to give it a try. I had to stop for a second because I realized the board was kind of sticking to the table a little bit and it was really hard to push through. So I just wiped a little bit of wax on the tabletop and it made it much easier to push this board through. Now I'll tell you, before I had this jointer, my typical method for flattening boards was to put it through a planer using a jig where I had hot glue and shims and things like that, and that's how I would flatten out one side. It was a long and tedious process, and I'm glad I won't be doing that anymore. After testing it out by flattening one side, I decided to flatten one of the edges and create that nice 90-degree angle that you'd want to start out with on a board. to do that, always make sure you put the flattened side against the fence so that it creates that 90-degree with the flat edge that you're creating. You don't need a jointer to flatten an edge like this or flatten the surface, but before using this jointer, I would have to do this process using my table saw and a jig that I created, and in the process it would create saw marks on the board, tiny little saw marks, not anything that you could see very well, but it made it really difficult to glue up a tabletop. It wasn't perfectly flat, so I'd have to use a hand plane to flatten everything out, and it really wasn't a fun process. It took a while. This will go much faster. After running everything through, I checked it out, and it looked like the edge and the side that I had flattened were perfectly square. They made a really nice cut, and that was quick and easy. Way better than using the table saw. After trying this out with the maple and seeing how it worked, I decided to run a piece of walnut that I had through the jointer and see how that worked as well. And it was much easier to push the walnut through. It's a little bit softer than the maple, so it went through a lot easier. It didn't take very many passes to get a nice flat surface. After flattening one side, I decided to flatten out an edge and make that nice 90-degree angle. So I ran it through. Again, remember to keep that flat side that you made against the fence so it creates that 90-degree perfectly. It only took me a few passes to get a nice edge on this piece of wood. And you'll notice as I finish flattening this out, as I finish my last pass, I spend just a few seconds admiring this nice flat edge that has been created in the perfect 90-degree angle. After running the edge through, I check it for 90 degrees, and I have this nice perfect 90-degree angle on there, and that did not take much time at all. I didn't show you, but I tested out these push blocks, and they worked fine. They were good. I think I like my grabber push blocks better. They're a little bigger and a little sturdier, but if you don't have those, these work fine. They're a good tool, so you can use those as well. After using this, it worked great. I'm obviously going to continue using it, and I expect that it will continue to work great. I will say this fence with these additional pieces on the back side here stabilizing it, this thing was stable. It didn't move at all, and this is an extended fence, so it's a 24-inch fence, which is longer than the typical benchtop joiner fence. So I definitely could see how well that was working for me. That was great. I like having that extra length along with the stabilizers. That makes this a great fence. Additionally, these table extensions, they make it so that the full table with the extensions is about 54 inches, which will allow me to use some longer boards. So additionally, it's got a strong 12-amp motor, so it had no problem cutting through the wood. The other thing I really like is these cast iron tabletops. These work great. Once I waxed them up, the wood ran through really smoothly. It's a nice tabletop. You can tell it's sturdy. It's going to last a long time. As far as I can tell, this is a great machine. The dust extraction worked great. I don't have a bunch of wood chips that flew off. I could feel a few of them coming off while I was cutting, but it pretty much took care of all of the dust and the wood chips. So this worked great. I'm actually impressed beyond my expectations. I like it. It's easy to use. It was really easy to set up. Really, it didn't take me long to set this up at all. Based on my initial work with this machine, I would recommend it. It worked great. It was easy to set up. Each piece of wood that I was using, the maple and the walnut, came out with a great surface and nice 90-degree angle on the edge. For my shop, this is gonna change a lot of my work. Like I said earlier, I was using jigs with my planer and table saw, and while that worked, it was time consuming, and this will end up with a much nicer edge. I'm guaranteed a 90-degree angle as long as I make sure the fence is squared, and this saves so much time. It's easy to work with. I'm a big fan. The one thing I'm gonna have to do, it is big, it is heavy. I'm going to need to build a cart for this. I'm a fan of this tool and I recommend it. I think you'll like it. And it's a little bit cheaper than some alternatives. So if you have a small shop, this Cutech 10-inch joiner is the way to go. I think it's a good product.